of us. I suggested before the 10 o'clock news we'd be talking to Anton Guinea about workplace accidents, and I wasn't wrong because here he is on the line. Anton, good morning.
Robert Cameron, how are you, mate? Great to be with you on the Pulse again.
Yeah, it's good to have you, and it's a situation where it's a sort of a bittersweet. I love talking to you because you're upbeat, vibrant and happy, but you represent something that's that still is a little problem in our society, and that's workplace accidents. No one wants to go to work and get hurt, but during this period of, I suppose you'd call it economic upheaval, there's a lot of activity, there's certainly a lot of construction and work programs, government-related, happening right around the country, so there's more people active on the workplace, but sadly that means that the opportunity for accidents on the increase as well. How are you holding up in that middle sector of safety and getting things happening?
Yeah, great, thanks, Robert. And you're right, like the construction industry's booming everywhere, and even in my little town here, we can't get a tradesman at the moment, and I guess I know it's the same around the country because I talk to people everywhere, and that construction boom, like you say, and I get that more work could mean more workplace fatalities and more workplace injuries, which really sucks. It's just a terrible thing to go, well, we're doing more work, so we're going to hurt more people, and that's what Edith Cow and Uni have found during a recent study. So they studied the economy and they studied workplace incidents. And, in the 16 years from 2003 to 2019, as the economy improves, guess what? Workplace incidents and injuries go up, which is a really tragic statistic. And I think it's one that I'd love just to, and thank you for having me, because you know what I'm like, I'm passionate about this and I want to bring it out and have a discussion about it in the public to say, hey, what's missing? And I've got my views on that. I think there's a whole range of stuff missing. And as you said, there's some stimulus packages out there, for example, that are stimulating the economy, which the government's done for us. And they've stimulated small business, stimulated construction, so with a $1.2 billion stimulus package for apprentices. So now we've got the construction industry that have been able to afford sort of more labour as they grow, which is really a really cool thing for business. I just wonder whether we're spending money on safety systems and safety leadership, Robert, that will keep those young workers safe as the businesses that they're in grow and get more work.
Yeah, because one of the catch-22s there, Anton, is when you're a young, fresh-faced person going into a work site for the first time, you're probably not thinking about, is this safe? That's not your first thought. Your first thought is doing the right thing, impressing the boss, keeping your job, all of that sort of stuff that is natural beyond it. So at that point, the onus on this is clearly on the employer to make sure that they're providing the right systems. And when there's vibrance and there is activity, you want outcomes, and sometimes you miss those key triggers early in the piece. And I guess that's one of the biggest concerns you have and why you're continuing to beat the drum and sing the message.
Well said, mate. I should be interviewing you, actually. Well, perfectly put. Like, when we send, and I've got kids that I send out to work every day, and a lot of your listeners will have too, and when we send them out, we hope, and we sort of pray to a degree, that their leaders will care for them, will actually understand that they've got a different priority rather than safety, and that we as leaders of organisations who are entrusted with people's kids or apprentices or even fellow adults that are brothers and sisters and wives and husbands and partners and significant others, that we have a responsibility to care for people that are working in our organisation and to actually say, you know what, I know we've got other priorities, and you alluded to it, that there's time, there's cost, there's schedule, there's quality, there's all these other priorities for small businesses, and they're trying to deliver all of this work in a great time frame so they can get to the next job, and the people in their organisations are rolling along with them, and they're let's run, and no one stops for a second to go, you know what, let's have a think about what we're doing and how we can do it in a way that we're not going to injure someone today. How do we as an industry, as a country, make safety leadership the talking topic rather than how much work we're getting done and how much the economy is booming? How do we talk about and how do we get out there that leaders have this responsibility to others, and with systems and with leadership and with conversations about workplace health and safety, and with the guidance for those in our care, in our business, that we can actually make a difference and we can help people go home safely at the end of the day with all their bits and pieces, because that's the goal of going to work, as you said, not to get injured, not to achieve schedules. It's because I'm going to tell you, I've been the 21-year-old that you talked about then that has other priorities rather than safety at work. And I got blown up on a switchboard and nearly died one day at work, which is why I'm so passionate about this, because I know the way I was thinking at the time, and I know that I had someone right beside me who could have helped me, supported me, prevent this thing from happening. And the sad part is, Robert, as you know, that most of these workplace incidents and injuries and fatalities are preventable.
Yeah.
That's the big deal.
Anton, one of the things we've talked a lot about, the team aspect, so an employer on a construction site, but there's so many situations where the onus for the safety is a very me thing. It's a singular thing. It's a business owner who sent home the apprentices at 4:00, and he wants to do that little bit extra, and he's there on site on his own, and he's up a ladder, and there's no one looking out for him, and the cords of electrical to all these situations, even truck drivers that they're probably under a company policy, but if they make the decision to not take that rest at 7:00 at night so they can be home at 10 rather than 11, they're the sort of situations where that's all a singular decision, and I suppose we sometimes take our eye off that ball when we're looking more at a team aspect.
Oh, good call. And if you have a look at the industries, Robert, that have got the most workplace, let's say fatalities, so year to date we've had 15 workers killed in the transport, postal and warehousing industry. So like you just alluded to then, the transport workers, or even tied workers working back driving forklifts, for example, around mobile equipment is a real struggle for workers in Australian workplaces. We lose a lot of lives. And then the next one down is the construction industry, and then of course the agricultural industry, which we hear a lot about. So
yeah, and that's the one I'm in, and look, I've done it myself, Anton. I've been working in a farm situation all by myself, kilometres from people, and taking risks and thinking back later, why did I do that? That was just silly. And you really have to keep challenging yourself, don't you?
Oh, for sure. And it's about linking up with yourself with consequences, Robert. It's about saying, hey, what could go wrong here? There's this mindset shift where you actually go, what could happen? And I've had people say to me, Anton, you get it because you felt the pain of a workplace. I go, yeah, well, look, learn from my pain. Don't go through your own. Work safe before it happens.
Yeah.
Don't wait till you're lying in a burns unit like I did before you go, actually I should work safely. And I'm with you, mate. And in that moment, see, there's a couple of things we've sort of alluded to during this conversation. One, it takes half a second for something to happen. It literally does. All of a sudden you're working on a ladder, then the ladder falls, and it's like a half a second and your life's changed. And the other thing is, how do we actually get ourselves to the point and get people like yourself in agriculture, or me as a small business owner too sometimes, when I'm running tired, for example, and I'll work long hours, how do we get ourselves to stop, think, and actually curb our behaviour to a point where we are the example? We are, as leaders, we're the people that others go, right, okay, cool, so you're doing it. It's good enough for you as a business owner. It's good enough for me. And that's the really key thing about when you say us personally making these decisions, like, you've been in agriculture and you've probably made unsafe decisions. And maybe you weren't in that moment able to say, hey, if this falls, it's 6 months in hospital, or it's a month in hospital, or I won't be wiping my own backside for the next month, which I couldn't do when I hurt both my hands. So yeah, there's this real mindset shift, Robert, how we can actually get ourselves to make different decisions.
I suppose you guys have done lots of business models about that economic equation of, we can't afford to do this, it's too expensive, we've just got to run the risk, as opposed to the financial implications of it going wrong. Is that been a powerful tool to sell to business leaders?
It sure has. And not only the cost of the workplace incident in the moment, one thing that we're hearing a lot about at the moment is work cover premiums skyrocket and they never come back down. And so, the cost of a serious workplace incident, now let alone a fatality, Robert, fatality investigations go on for years and years, and potentially will put people out of business. And the fines are significant. The short-term cost saving from not doing something safely to the long-term cost impact on a business of a workplace incident, mate, as you well said, they're polar opposites. They're literally polar opposites, and that's a challenge for our small business owners, because 3 words: safety costs money, and here's another 3: safety costs time. It actually takes we've got to buy some PPE. We've got to slow down a little bit. We've got to help other people around us with the right safety gear. So we might need to buy a ladder, or we might need to buy something else. And a lot of small business owners push back as soon as there's a safety cost. As soon as someone says, hey, I need a safety step here. No, we'll just step up on the chair or step up on that thing there. It's that cost model, that sort of dichotomy between I save now and then I pay later if something happens. And people don't see that short-term cost as a worthwhile spend. They think it's just an imposition. You know what? It's an investment. Safety spend is an investment, Robert. And so when we can get construction leaders and industry leaders talking like that, I think we'll see the narrative change a little bit.
Anton, you've been in the industry for a while. Do you think industry leaders, business owners, are getting better at this, or is it just a constant, ongoing push from people in your position to remind them and, well, sadly, in some cases, probably force them to do the right thing?
Robert, I think, let me give you 2 perspectives on it. I think we are, so since, let's say 2013, we've seen workplace fatalities come down, which has been pleasing around Australia. At the same time that workplace fatalities go up and incidents go up during an economic construction boom, in the mining industry, incident rates go down. So isn't that interesting that we've got an industry that is impacted by booms too, as we know, because China goes up and all of a sudden we've got mining that goes up and it's got to meet that demand. In the mining sector, we see less incidents and injuries during booms, whereas in construction we see an increase. So, yes, overall we're seeing workplace fatalities particularly come down. Yes, we're seeing big industry reduce fatalities during construction boom, though we're seeing fatalities in construction and smaller businesses go up. So we've got to, in answer to your question, and this is a long-winded answer to your question, in answer to your question, I'm going to say there's a slight shift, there's a slight improvement in small business. We can't not talk about it anymore. I think for too long we've had small businesses being able to dodge it a little bit, whereas now it's becoming more and more commonplace to talk about workplace safety even on a construction site, so even building site.
I think last time you and I spoke about my own experience of going working part-time in a shutdown at a big-ish organisation. First time I'd probably worked in an organisation that big, and I must admit their adherence to safety and the ambassadors and drivers of it was to the point of, to me, thinking that's overdoing it. But after you're there a week, you realise why. And it's really important, and it gives you that real sense of awareness and safety, and the fact that you're being looked after. It's probably those smaller groups, the building sites, the owner and the 3 employees, where it's rush, we've got to get to this next job, that you pointed out earlier in the interview, that sometimes the simple, easy things are overlooked because we've just got to get it done.
No, exactly right. And I love what you said then when you said the why. You know, there's a big why behind workplace health and safety, so I've got a big why because I know what it feels like to get injured. And for leaders, they probably, in small organisations, don't quite have that why that you felt now when you experience it, and you can feel like the fact that this thing is value add and it makes it different. So, yeah, and that's the challenge. It's for small businesses, when they can link up to that why, when they can really see benefit, see value, and that's the change in mindset for them. What's the value in this? The value is that I don't hurt my other humans.
Yeah, that's right. Mate, really appreciate your time again. We'll obviously tap into you again in another 4 or 6 or 8 weeks or something, but but we do have information coming from you, so if there's an issue worth talking about, we'll go earlier. But it's good to touch in on this subject because it's a very important one, and we just got to make sure that there's awareness. And I think if we can make every person, whether they are an employer or employee, to be aware of the environment they're working in, that's the key thing.
You are the champion, mate. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot for a public discussion around a really important topic.
Good on you, mate. All the very best. Anton Guinea, a man who has suffered himself in this particular space, but now working very hard to keep others safe. Tomorrow...